What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that brings you the very best guests in true crime and also brings you breaking news. It was a test of sorts to put this together, but not only are the best guests great guests, they're good people, and that is why we have a panel. They're coming on very last minute, as we do have breaking news. The BTK serial killer. He's been named the prime suspect in two unsolved killings, one in Oklahoma, home to Dr. Roger Rhodes, who's joining us today, and another in Missouri, leading authorities to dig this week near his former BTK, also his real name is Dennis Rader, near his Kansas property in Park City, where he once lived with our friend Kerry Rawson. Of course, that is Dennis Rader's daughter. She's been on the show many times, and we are thinking of Kerry first and foremost. This is obviously not an easy story or circumstances for her to deal with, and she is not feeling well on top of everything. She did say she may pop into the chat, so keep an eye out for Kerry, and please give her a warm welcome if she does, in fact, show up. Now, per local news in Oklahoma, and this is all just coming together in the last couple of hours, so we're going to have to unravel this together. But per local Oklahoma news, the Oklahoma Sheriff's Office in Osage County, which is not far from where Dennis Rader had this other home in Park City, Kansas. It's about a 2-hour drive from what I understand. The Sheriff's Office there now saying that they are, quote unquote, 100% certain of Dennis Rader's ties to a teen's 1976 disappearance, and her name is Cynthia. She goes by Cindy Kenny. Again, she went missing back in 76, so we'll get into some of the details. But best guest here to join us, Jennifer Koffendorfer. You know her well with a beautiful brick background. She has a career in federal law enforcement spanning over 28 years, including investigative, operational leadership, and training experiences. She was a special agent with the FBI in gangs, narcotics, organized crime. She teaches self-defense, so don't mess with Koff. It won't end well for you. And then we've got Chief Chris Anderson. I owe him. He literally responded about 20 minutes ago, and I begged and pleaded, and he said yes in that mellifluous voice of his. Of course, he is a former detective sergeant, retired from the Birmingham Police Department. He has 27 years of experience in law enforcement, now a chief at a local university near him, and he is the host of Reasonable Doubt. He has also been on A&E's First 48 Birmingham, also the host of the Crime and Cookie Juice podcast, and author of the upcoming book. The book is out, The Case. And what's the title of the new book, Chris?
The new book is called Man, You Are Crazy.
Man, You Are Crazy. And that's coming out about...
sounds like my job.
Yeah, well, it's about mental health and law enforcement and the things they go through. I was just talking to an active police officer in Las Vegas who breached the door at the Las Vegas mass shooting, and he experienced hell that day. It's called 1 October, and that's how it's known in Vegas and around the world, and we're trying to get him on for that anniversary. Last but not least, Dr. Roger Rhodes, a licensed therapist in private practice in South Carolina, specializing in dysfunctional families. He's also worked inside the prison system. And as I said before, he is he's an Oklahoman originally, now living in South Carolina. Ski hat Sarah without the ski hat. Dr. Roger Rhodes is one of the guests. Woo-hoo!
Yeah, buddy. Hey, I'm a good old Okie at heart.
A good old Okie. There you go. So, on a serious note, obviously the two victims, I just want to mention them off the top here. We've got Cynthia Cindy Kenny. So we know Kenny, my apologies. So we know who we are talking about. She was last seen in 1976. The undersheriff in Osage County in Oklahoma previously said that the search spiraled from the investigation into Cynthia Cindy Dawn Kenny. She was a 16-year-old cheerleader who was last seen leaving a relative's laundromat all the way back in 1976. And again, we'll get into some of the more of the details revolving around this. The other victim at play here, who they now believe BTK is tied to, her name was Shauna Garber. And it's sad because when you Google her, only her baby photo shows up from when she was like 4 or 5 years old. She went missing in 1990. A detective from Missouri referred, I should say, brought this up because of her disappearance back on Halloween in 1990. I apologize. I threw my notes together here very quickly. So these are the two who authorities believe are linked now to BTK all these years later. For those who don't know much about Dennis Rader, otherwise known as BTK, he gave himself that name because he bind, tortured, and killed his victims. An infamous American serial killer. He has confessed to murdering 10 people in Wichita and Park City, Kansas, which is where they made sort of a gruesome discovery today, and we're going to get into that. But he killed between the years 1974 and 1991. He often sent these taunting letters to police and media outlets describing the details of his crimes. After a 13-year hiatus, he started sending letters again back in 2004 and was ultimately arrested in 2005. And he's currently serving 10 consecutive life sentences at the El Dorado Correctional Facility. And this is not private information, but Kerry Rawson did, in fact, visit him there not too long ago to try to get information from him about these new cases. It was difficult to do. And you see a picture of Dennis Rader there looking a little thin. So before we get into any of the details, just Jennifer Coffendorfer, to you, when this news broke today, did you get the chills? What did you think? Now there might be 2 other victims that apparently Dennis Rader never confessed to.
Well, I have to say, for me, I've been sitting on this for a while. So my aha moment was actually several months ago. As you know, or may know, I have a close relationship with Carrie. So I knew she was assisting law enforcement with this effort. But certainly it was a bit of an aha moment. I don't know if you know this, but I grew up only 5 miles from the Rader home in Kansas. And so,
Wow.
certainly during the heart of his murders,
God bless you for that.
I know it was scary times. There's no one that didn't know about him and what he was doing. We both went to Wichita State also for our criminology degree, Dennis Rader and I. So there's a lot of background together. But back to your question, certainly it was when she called and told me, I just thought it was so interesting because isn't it just something to consider that Kansas, we didn't have the death penalty back then. Oklahoma and Missouri did. Did he not confess or give up any information related to these crimes because he was so worried about the death penalty?
And Jen, just quickly, just to paint a picture, since you are from there, which is fascinating, what was the neighborhood like? What was it like growing up there outside of this black eye, of course?
You know, if you can just imagine the most kind of rural, it was urban, but set in rural wheat fields and sunflower fields and 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses. Everybody was, middle class, just really a beautiful place to grow up in terms of the people. It's where you drive down the road and people have their hand on the steering wheel and they go like this, to complete strangers. And it was just such a warm place to grow up in Kansas.
Chief Anderson, let's get into the sort of the lead in all this, and then we'll work our way backwards. But Oklahoma investigators who were looking into cold case murders announced today that they located what they're describing as Pantyhose Ligature on the former Kansas property of Dennis Rader. This is according to the Osage County Sheriff, Eddie Virden. So it's complicated because there's Kansas involved here. These investigators are from Oklahoma because they were looking at other cold cases. And then you've got Missouri involved as well. And the sheriff, his name is Eddie Virden, told Fox News Digital, and great work by Mike Ruiz, who lays low but is a great crime journalist. He said that the piece of evidence was found during a search of the property back in April. I'm wondering, Chief, what you think of the fact that now they found all these years later, and this is from a missing girl back in 1976. They found, and we don't know if it's linked to that crime. I have to be clear here, but they found pantyhose ligature under some cement. We'll get into that. But what about this discovery at his previous home so many years after the fact? I mean, he was arrested 18 years ago.
It's kind of indicative of a serial killer. They will keep little mementos of crimes that they've committed, even years later. So, I'm not surprised by it at all. It doesn't seem that, he's been able to evade arrest for many, many, many years and still been able to carry on life for years on, even committing some more murder. So, I'm not surprised by it. And one thing I want to make sure I also say is a prayers to Carrie. I was hoping that she'd be on tonight, but I understand because we don't realize how many victims there are when it comes to homicides. There are so many other victims that may not be those victims that we see that have been murdered, but they're, these are family members that are left here to mourn the loss of their loved ones, and the ones that are on the other side with the suspect or the defendants in these cases. They become victims also because their loved one decided to commit these crimes. So prayers to Carrie. I hate that this had to happen to her. But I appreciate how much of a trooper she's been, in trying to make sure that these families get closure that they deserve.
And very eloquently said, and this is no secret because she's been tweeting, but she was in the hospital with COVID, thinking maybe it was even pneumonia. I think she was just released today. So we are thinking of her. And by the way, Chelsea Whitaker, wait, hang on. BK, this is Brian Koberger now. It's a crazy news day. He did waive his right to a speedy trial on a totally separate note, but just so you guys are aware. So this trial now with Brian Koberger, the accused murderer in the Idaho 4, that trial will not begin, and it potentially could take years before it does. So that is a blow to the victims' families there, because now they're going to have to wait indefinitely, and that's what it's all about. And the victims' families all around today are suffering. And speaking of that, Dr. Raj, so Dennis Rader, one of the most infamous serial killers in America, just speak to the collateral damage. I mean, we know he murdered at least 10 people, and I'm getting the chills talking about it. So not only do you have all the victims and a ripple effect, all their families and their parents and their siblings, but then you also have Kerry Rawson, and she has a brother and a mother, and all these people, even the suspects. Can you just talk to the ripple effect when these heinous crimes occur, how they impact so many people?
Well, the biggest thing to put your minds around is the idea that these perpetrators don't care. They don't care. That their pulse doesn't change killing whoever they kill. That's just part of who they are and what they do and what it's about. See, what it throws is us when you have regular people with a conscience, it really disturbs us, because it's hard for us to imagine somebody that can be so heinous and so uncaring that they can go out and snuff out people's lives, and they don't care about those people's lives or the collateral damage. They don't care. They're just a blank slate emotionally to these crimes.
Raj, I just saw a comment which is triggering a question for you. A lot of times someone is saying that BTK is not a very smart guy, which I don't know how they're making an assessment one way or the other.
Wait a minute. What did the chief say about that? Wait a minute. Let's refer to the guest. Do you think he's dumb?
Not at all. This man has been able to get away. I've seen dumb criminals. Yeah, right. Yeah. I've seen dumb criminals. He's not one of them.
Well, Dr. Raj, so that's what I wanted to ask you. If you're a serial killer, a lot of times they are referred to as being highly intelligent. Do you think that is often the case because they're able to plan these things out and not get caught? How do you diagnose that, or how do you label?
Well, the best way for regular people to get serial killers is to understand alcoholics. What are they willing to do to get a drink? And one of the things you hear from people is, oh, that's not the person I went to high school with. Something's different about them. Yeah. They learn to adjust to the focus of what they needed. That's the same way with serial killers. They're like alcoholics. Wait a minute. If I've got to do this, then that's what I'm going to do to keep away from the consequences of harming people. And so that's the same mindset, or very similar mindsets of people. And so that's why it's so hard. And certainly the ones that are caught down the road are incredibly smart. They've sat down and really evaluate. See, their focus is not killing people. Their focus is beating the system. And what do they have to do to beat the system? And that's what they do. They're very smart people. All serial killers are very smart people.
By the way, this is the one and only Gary Bricado. Unless someone is being an imposter, Gary is a PhD and expert in serial killers, and he's commenting here. We asked him to come on the show. It was very last minute, and I didn't even get a chance to talk to Gary, but great to see him here. One of 6 ligatures on Garber was only available to military personnel. They weren't home invasion cases, and Rader boasts these aren't his, I don't think. Jennifer Koffendorfer. Hold on one sec, Gary. Hi, all. So far, I think we need to be skeptical that these are Rader cases. Garber was sexually assaulted, which Rader didn't do. The MO is totally different. Now, this is coming from one of the leading experts in the world on serial killers, the Osage County Sheriff's Office, saying that 100% they're sure this is linked. Gary Bricado, an intellectual, a scholar, saying not so fast. Jennifer Koffendorfer, what say you?
Well, let me comment on both. When I saw that the young lady from Missouri was sexually assaulted, immediately my antenna went up, because that is not that was not Dennis Rader's MO. Was there semen there? Yes. Did he assault after they were dead? Yes. All of that. But he didn't rape. And so that my antennas went up. On the young woman, though, in Oklahoma, I was in the belief that that is a legitimate Dennis Rader matchup, really based on a couple of things. First of all, how did they get onto that case? It was from one of the writings of Dennis Rader, where he mentions a bad laundry day. She was last seen at the laundromat, which was across from the bank where he was an ADT alarm installer. So when you look at all of that, and then also the fact that they have so much more information, the police there, that we don't see, and they are 100% sure by their statements. That one I'm leaning toward as being a yes, but I agree with Dr. B on the Missouri. It's bothersome. It would be off of his MO.
Chris Anderson, curious to get your take. I mean, how closely do serial killers, they seem to me, and I've used this phrase before, and that's a Dr. Raj question, sort of obsessive compulsive, very OCD and very meticulous. Have you seen a serial killer kind of deviate from the MO, if he's not raping and then suddenly to rape or sexually assault?
So I think that he has a point. You shouldn't, you know how I am. You should always keep an open mind about cases. You just don't, there's no 100% absolute stamp it, close it, is done case that's ever been done in the United States. None of them. So, you should always keep an open mind when you're dealing with evidence. But here is one thing that I know for a fact. I could see serial killers go on and have a run like BTK has had if they change certain things about their MO, move to different areas, stayed in a certain area, and then kind of changed up certain things. Now, is that indicative of every serial killer? Does every serial killer change their MO? Absolutely not. But I could see someone with the span that he was able to get away with the murders that he committed, I could see there being some changes in some of the things that he did. Rape, going from a rape to begin sexually assaulting people, that's a huge jump. But I do believe that Dr. Gary is onto something here. When you think of that's a huge jump. So you don't usually see that happen. But you should always keep an open mind about any evidence that you have in any case.
And so, Jen, if I'm understanding this right, and Raj, I'm coming to you in a minute, but if I understand this right, this pantyhose ligature was actually discovered back in April, just announced today. Is that correct, the way you understand it?
Yes.
Okay, so would they have already done some sort of DNA testing, or is it just degraded beyond belief at this point, all these years later? What can they do DNA-wise?
Well, that's a good question. And DNA can stand the test of time under the right circumstances. I don't know. I find it interesting. Of course, they're not releasing any of that information, but the fact that they said with such strong assurity that the Oklahoma case was connected, it makes me wonder.
Raj, what's going through your mind right now as a therapist listening to this? I'm just curious.
Well, the first thing I want to say is, as someone who's lived in Oklahoma, when you talk about any town in Oklahoma, except for Oklahoma City and Tulsa, you're talking about a small town, okay? That's the first thing you need to understand. Second thing you need to understand, the plains. It's not like, oh, you cross the Oklahoma-Kansas border, and that's real different. No, it's the same land. It's like Texas. It's the plains. So could this guy in his mentally ill self travel and do weird stuff and do different stuff? You bet he could. Because no matter what people are doing, they do it situationally specific. Okay? They do things in the same way because there's an element of comfort and ease in that. That's why you don't see much MO change, but you have to factor in situation. Who was the person? What were they like? How did they handle things? Were they submissive or were they aggressive people? All these kind of things have to play in to how the killer is going to operate, because the same operation doesn't work in every person's situation.
Jessica K coming out, born, raised, and still living in Wichita, Kansas. I was raised knowing the stories about the serial killer. Jennifer Coffendorfer giving the 2 thumbs up. It was huge when he was caught. Very sad. There's more, and prayers for Kerry. Right on with that. And then back to you, Raj, real quick on this one. A sexually motivated crime doesn't necessarily have actual sexual assault in the commission of a crime. Is that a correct delineation there?
Yes, I think that it's just easier for people to cookie cutter, issues that are beyond their imagination. Okay, this is easy if I think it this way. It's easier if I put it this way. Every situation is different. Praise God for police. Man, you have to have a special personality to do that. It's hard. It's hard.
And this is an interesting question, which from Ski Hat Sarah, now Ski Hatless Sarah, is there a breakdown of serial killers that live in cities versus small towns? Jen, any idea? Like the majority of serial killers come from smaller towns. Do you have any idea?
I don't know about that statistic. No, I don't know specifically small towns versus big towns. I can't answer that.
And Gary brings up a good point right here. And I was thinking this exact same thing. He seems to be a boaster. He wrote to media many times. That's how he got caught. In fact, he probably wouldn't have gotten caught if he didn't tease law enforcement, which he did. And guys like Chief Anderson don't like to be teased by serial killers. So they went out and got him.
Good move.
Why would he not boast about these? Chief, to you, more of a psychological question, but if you've got a serial killer that's been boasting for 20, 30, 40 years, why would he stop now and not say, hey, I did this?
that is a question that's way beyond my pay grade. I have, it's kind of a hard answer because you're trying to. If I think about that answer, I'm thinking that from a rational mindset. Why would he do this? You can't think rationally when you deal with some of these folks. You know what I'm saying? So that's a hard question to ask. I'm sure Gary could answer it much better than I could, but that's the way my mind works. I would ask the exact same question, but these are rational thoughts coming from a rational mind.
Yeah,
correct. Raj, go ahead. Raj, what about that? It's hard for us to compute the mind of a serial killer because we just don't think that way. So go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I'm just saying, he's saying, oh, he's a boaster. He'll always boast. Why doesn't he boast about this? And I'm saying, I've not seen serial killers to be top of the list boasters. They're control artists. That means more to them than anything. It's to be in control. That's why they taunt the police. That's why they move in the different circles. It's an issue of control. So could he be quiet as a way of being in control? You bet. So it's not a direct, he boasts, so he should say no. I know, no. They have better control than that. And even if he's sitting in prison, if he took are you smarter than a policeman, he would score 100.
And I love the way Raj thinks. He's so down to earth, but that was counterintuitive. You think he'd boast, but Raj is saying to be in control. Maybe he's keeping it on the down low, and that is very possible. Jason Frere says, welcome, Jason. Seems he would have bragged about this already, followed up by Oklahoma's death penalty state. This might be influencing his willingness to confess. Jen Koffendorfer, speak to that.
Yes, that's exactly why I would believe if, again, it's proven that he was responsible for these two. Those are death penalty states. We know he is adamantly against the death penalty. This is a guy that wanted to sit and hours on end and still does want to entertain everyone with all of his crimes and what he did and talk about them and boast about them. So he doesn't want to be dead. He wants to be alive. And I would believe he's shaking in his boots right now if he is responsible for either of these two, because he could face the death penalty.
And he would likely get it. I'm no lawyer, I'm no law enforcement agent, but I've got a little common sense, a tiny bit, and I think he would definitely fit the bill. Kyle Prime here says, I love seeing new names, by the way. Welcome, Kyle. He clearly didn't confess to any crimes tied to a state with the death penalty. I'm sure he also liked having crimes he wasn't caught for. That is very possible. Chief, back to you. We haven't even really gotten into the story yet. Gary says MO, the modus operandi, can change, but his all caps signature elements would be essential. Too bad Gary's not on the stream. We should
right.
I can't even get him the link right now, but these are great points from Gary. So Chief, to you, investigators went back this week to search this property to follow up on any leads of murders and missing people, which may be tied to Rader. By the way, Jen, this house in Park City, I think it is that the home that Kerry grew up in? Is it the same home, or did they switch homes?
No, that's where she grew up.
Okay, same home, because I got mixed up with Wichita. I don't know the area that well. So same home that our very own Kerry Rawson grew up in. Again, our hearts going out to her tonight. This is not easy for her to deal with. And, she's dealt yet another blow. But Chief, back to you. So according to the sheriff, and this is a direct quote, one of the items we recovered at the time when they were there in April was what appears to be a quote unquote pantyhose ligature. That item was collected and now will be turned over to KBI, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, at some point in time when they're ready, along with anything else. It sounds like it hasn't been given to them. What, from an investigative standpoint now, Chief, what goes on now that they have this evidence? Because this, again, from what I understand, and I think I understand it correctly, it was discovered in April, but he's talking about this today. It says it has not been handed over.
That's kind of that's strange in our spectrum. that it would have been it was located in April and hadn't been turned over to another authority, and then you're very confident in saying that this belongs to this person. It leads me to believe that they obtained that information by some other means, maybe another witness, maybe another confession, maybe a letter or something. There's something else that we haven't gotten as the general public that has happened in this investigation. And that's the reason why they are so confident, because I can tell you right now, law enforcement is not going to come out and be that definitive in saying that this is the person that we believe is responsible for this crime if they didn't have more information than what we know in the general public. Because number one, if they lose this case or something screws up, they end up with egg on their face. And then number two, if they do lose this case, you re-victimize the families who've been waiting 15, 20, and 30 years for finding some sort of justice in the loss of their child. So yeah, I just can't believe that they would do this without having some definitive information. If they are, I feel bad for the families. Or if they have, I feel bad for the families. But I just don't think that would happen. Even if you don't have that many, if you're not, it's Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a lot of murders in Oklahoma. I mean,
now let's not be disparaging about it.
Okay. I won't talk much about your hometown, but I will say this.
Man,
that's one of the cities that has the most episodes of First 48. How about that?
Okay, there we go. Okay. Now we're preaching the gospel.
You don't go on First 48 for just just to talk about cases. No, there's a reason for you to be on those shows. So, but I will. I mean, these are not rookie investigators that would just come out and say anything without any information. So I feel strongly that there's some more information that has not been told to the general public.
I'm sure that is the case, as it usually is and should be. Carly Erickson, BTK, calls his compartmentalizing. We've talked about this a lot. Cubing. Dr. Raj, since you're the psychologist, real quick before we move, I haven't gotten to a lot of the details of today's news still, but Raj, it's almost like a Rubik's Cube. They say that Dennis Rader could put on whatever personality he wanted. Serial killer one moment, Boy Scouts leader the next, president of his church the next. How do you do that?
Well, first of all, you become mentally ill. Okay, that's the first step. In real world terms, he's crazy. Okay, and what he's learned to do, this is another element of being smart, is he's realized that the brain is like drawers in a cabinet, and that you can put a certain thought or a certain idea in one and shut the door and leave it and go to another one. And that's what he's done mentally. He has, as he's very smart and very crazy, and he compartmentalizes into different areas to put different information. Again, he's a control person. He's the only one with the key. And if he doesn't want to unlock that, he's not going to unlock it. And another thing that has been said about, evidence not being handed over. Well, you're acting like information between professionals was not handed over. Oh my Lord, come on, let's get real. The professionals all talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Now, whether something physically got moved, I don't think they're in a high effort to get that, but they were trying to set him up. They're trying to outsmart a mentally ill guy. That's real hard to do.
Interesting.
Discussing mentally ill doesn't mean you're weak, just means you're weird.
I'm not T-Pain. I think this is a good time to invite Gary Mercado onto STS. He'd definitely be a best guest. He's been here a bunch before with the great Dr. Ann Burgess. Gary Mercado has an open invite. Anytime he wants to come on this show, he is more than welcome. This is an interesting question, but I think I know the answer. Jen, could Koberger and now Lisk media coverage be prompting him to speak again for the attention? The problem, Jen, is that we know he stopped talking to investigators, right?
Right. Yeah, no, he's not talking. He didn't talk to Carrie, and he's not talking to investigators. from my understanding. So he's not talking, but can I digress 1 second back
Yes,
to the
ma'am.
compartmentalization? And I want to see if Chief did this as well. I certainly finally figured out, it probably took me 6 or 7 years, how to compartmentalize. And I think I got okay with it, once I became a mom, which was well into my law enforcement career, dealing with sippy cups and soccer games and love and cuddling and on my hands and knees playing, and then dealing with the scum of the earth and seeing terrible things and being able to compartmentalize that human and then switch over to soccer mom. It was hard to do. Took me a while, but you have to do it, to me, as a coping mechanism. That's how I feel, but I don't think I'm crazy. It's just a coping mechanism. Chief,
Let me jump in and say the whole idea of compartmentalizing and scientists working with that is doing well with Alzheimer patients. That if they learn to have different compartments, and a piece of their mind goes, they can go to different compartments and operate well. And boy, you put it beautifully, mother, investigator. But if you put one in one drawer and one in another, and you hold the key and are in control of opening and closing, you continue to be well, and you continue to do your job.
Chief,
So
curious to get your take on that, because you got a book, Man, You're Crazy, that you're working on.
Absolutely. And while the title is actually funny, but I mean, that's kind of the reason why we came up with the name of it, because so many people in law enforcement don't seek the help that they need to seek when you go through different aspects of the career, of the profession. And I'll give you my personal experience. Yeah, I had to learn how to compartmentalize, because when I first started in homicide, I had been with the department for about 9 or 10 years. I was a young guy, in my early 30s, late 20s. And I didn't know how to compartmentalize. So I started off compartmentalizing with alcohol. That was the best way that I could do it.
There you go.
And then after I realized how much damage I was doing to my family and to my victims and my profession, I realized that I had to figure out another way. So and that's when I learned how to take certain aspects of the investigation and put it in one box, and arrange it in a way so that when it was time for me to go home, I can go home and be with my family and be my son and my daughter's basketball coach. But when I came back to work, I could pull everything out of that drawer, put it back on the table, and figure out, how do I get some justice for these victims? Now, a lot of law enforcement officers don't know how to do that. So what we've seen in my profession is, you'll see law enforcement officers come to a victim's house to give them a death notification, and they're so stoic and they're so uncaring, and they don't have any emotion. They don't show any emotion. Well, I'm not a scientist and I'm not a psychologist, but I would bet one of my retirement checks that the reason why this happened is because these officers are still compartmentalizing the fact that they have to detach so much from what they just saw, that they take it to the victims' houses, and they care just as much as most of these officers care just as much as the families do, but they can't go in and release that emotion because they have to keep it compartmentalized. And they have to do that just so that they can go home and be the basketball coaches and the fathers and the husbands that they need to be for their houses.
That's fascinating.
And I want to make it real clear. Compartmentalizing is a skill set. And I'm glad that you mentioned not everybody has that.
No.
And one of the easy ways to cope with so many different compartments in your world is to use drugs or alcohol. That's the number one. Do it, and people check out. Mm-hmm. And so that's very dangerous and very destructive. But both of you guys brought up a healthy, number one, you had an issue, and how do you do it? Here's the healthy way. And also saying, I had to do that to get it done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very transparent when it comes to my issues, because people will say, Detective Chris Anderson from First 48 or Detective Chris Anderson from Reasonable Doubt, and they think that this man has never had any problems in his life. Well, I'm very transparent and very open about everything that I talk about, because I don't want to see another Detective Chris Anderson take the steps that I had to go through in order to become this person that I am today.
And that's why the Chief's an awesome guy. And look at that, Robbie Joseph. That the First 48 detective, that is Chief Chris Anderson to you. Yes, it is. Best guest also from Reasonable Doubt. And check out his podcast, the Cookie Juice podcast. Oklahoma is a death penalty state. Once again, he'll never admit to a crime there. And then I think this is Gary responding to what Dr. Rhodes said here. BTK's method of control was narcissistic boasting, but it's an interesting point about this being a different way of controlling. If he committed these, it's a very unusual case in changing his MO. But yeah, that's Pastor. Go ahead.
But it's not unusual.
I got so much that I want to say. I wish Gary was here. Next time he's on, please let me come on with him. I would love. And it's not.
And I want to come on to hear it.
I'm looking to learn. I really want to learn, because this helps me. Even though I'm not working homicides anymore, I would love to learn from it. But to me, it would seem like he's still involved in one of his. The method of control is what I see out of him. Him boasting, him calling himself the BTK, and all of that. All of those are facets of control. So how do we know that this is not just his way of still controlling the narrative or controlling the situation, if you will, by not confessing to these murders, or not or doing the things that he's done for so many years in order to keep his case and himself relevant.
Right.
Go ahead, Raj.
Hate to say he's a media whore. That's what he is. I mean, and so if this gets him in front of a camera, this is why he didn't want to fess up to any place with a death penalty, because his show would be canceled.
Raj, what about the irony, Raj? And I was thinking about this while you guys were all talking. What about the irony that he's an infamous serial killer confessing to killing at least 10 people, but it appears he's afraid to die himself, and maybe twisting the narrative so he doesn't face a death penalty? What about that irony?
Well, see, first of all, you have to think what floats his boat. And what floats his boat is the narcissistic, the person mentioning narcissistic. Yeah, that drives him also. He is a narcissist, and he does love the camera, and anything that would interrupt with that, he doesn't want. And being caught would never interrupt his media exposure. It would actually raise his media exposure. And so he's sitting in jail, nothing to do, looking at the walls. They come up with something new. But now he's back on. Now we're talking about him again. Man, if you don't think he's juiced by that,
someone told me he does follow media closely, even podcasts potentially. So that's always interesting to me. Jason Monfrere, my brother, having someone with Gary's expertise just pop up in the chat and engage with us is definitely a differentiator from other channels, as is our amazing community. I would say best guest, better community. No offense to the guests, but we're all great. So how about that? So Jason, I've never seen you before. You better come back. Chelsea Whitaker says right here, oh, that's the COE beat me to it. Another super sticker from my home state, New Jersey. Kathy, this nightmare just won't end. Prayers for Kerry. And then this is what I was bringing up. STS Nation is best guest and an open-minded, compassionate, and well-informed chat. Love you all. Love you back. So back to some of the breaking news today. So they said that this ligature, Ansley Green says in another super sticker, thank you. It's his game. He likes controlling the game again. It sounds like it's all about control. Georgia from OKC, Oklahoma City. Great to have you. Another super sticker. So Jennifer, to you, the sheriff said that this ligature was found underneath a concrete area where Dennis Rader had told others that he had hidden some trophies that had, quote unquote, never been found. And then the sheriff goes on, and this is a quote. The short version is, through the investigation, we developed information of some possible trophies of Dennis Rader's, and we followed up on those leads and worked with Park City in Kansas. That is according to the Oklahoma sheriff, Eddie Virden. We did a dig in the area, and we recovered the items. Again, I'm always fascinated, Jennifer, that these cold cases from 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago can still be solved. It's never over till it's over. Is that right?
That is right. And the interesting nugget that I caught from what the sheriff said was how they were concealed. So literally, they had to dig up concrete. On top of the concrete was a shed, and below the concrete, and I believe he said, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a couple of feet or more. Dennis Rader used shingles to incorporate a housing for these items. So I thought they said 14 to 15 inches under that slab. And then I'm picturing this encapsulated compartment with shingle material to protect his trophies. I mean, that's just so meticulous and so interesting to me. It shows how important they were, that he wanted to keep them safe. I'm sure he fantasizes about them underneath there and that they're safe, and just thinking about how he used those items or if they were personally from that person. And then also how important it was that they were not found. So it's just interesting.
What's not interesting but funny? Can you imagine Dennis sitting in jail saying, well, if I would have ever done anything in any of the states in America, I would have done it under a shed below the concrete. And then they go and do the shed, the concrete, and they find it and act like they're geniuses. No, he let them there. He's the genius. He didn't. They didn't just come from it psychically. He fed them the information, and they followed the crumbs.
Yeah, and Chief, that's what I was going to ask you about. So I guess this is in prison. That's my assumption, because he's been in there for 18 years. But the sheriff said that he had hidden some trophies that, quote unquote, had never been found, and he, quote unquote, told others that. If you were put on like a cold case unit and you wanted to solve this case and you thought Rader would do it, are you going into the prison? He's at the El Dorado prison in Kansas. Are you going in there and trying to lean on inmates that know him to see what he's been talking to them about?
Oh, absolutely. Am I? Oh my God. Yes. We are leaning on every bit of information that we can find. We're leaning on it. I've worked, as a matter of fact, I think this case was in Oklahoma. We had a case on reasonable doubt where I saw law enforcement officers actually had other undercover officers to go inside of the prison and stay in prison for months to get close to certain suspects. And they were very, very successful in what they were doing. These are law enforcement officers that go into prison, and they populate right along with the rest of the population, get to know the person that they are, I won't say targeting, but the person that they're suspecting in a certain crime, get to know them. And then what happens once you become comfortable with a certain person, you begin to talk. And that's what happened in that particular case. So I wouldn't be. So yeah, if I was a lead investigator on a case like this, I have a guy that I've arrested for a crime that spanned, multiple years. Absolutely. At every point, I'm going to do everything I can to gather as much information as I can to help my investigation.
Sherilyn Monroe. He leaked it on purpose. I'm looking for a really interesting comment here that I just lost, and bear with me for 1 second. But Raj, the gist of the comment, and I'll find it in a second, was, and this is difficult. And by the way, both Jennifer and I have talked to Carrie, and Carrie, and I think to quote her, said, "I've got my big boy pants on," or something to that effect, though, and not to worry about her. And we're all, we're worried about her, and we check in on her, and I'll check in on her after this show to make sure she's okay. But the comment was something along the lines of, Carrie has been all over the news being asked about both the Long Island serial killer and Brian Kohberger, Rex Heuermann and Brian Kohberger. Could that have possibly triggered Dennis Rader, because he's used to the attention? He wants the attention. And now the daughter has got, as it says here from Nightwood, the limelight again. And Jen, I'd love to get your take on that as well. But your thoughts, Dr. Raj?
Well, I think the thoughts come in logic. And you're talking about someone who's not well. If you're thinking if he does A, B happens. I doubt that. I think that what you have to look at is individually the problem you've got on your hands. And there's the other thing about following people in prison. That's a great strategy if you're talking about criminals. This guy's not a criminal. He's mentally ill. They're not holding him in a mental hospital. They're holding him in a prison. But a criminal will leak. But a mentally ill person does not usually leak because they're operating within their own brain in their own world. And so they have no need to tell somebody something else. So there's where that connection breaks down. You got to make sure who you have on your hands.
Jen, this is the actual comment. I found it from Anna Lissette. "I figure Rader is pissed off because Carrie's been all over the media consulting on Rex Heuermann. She's been getting attention he demands, in my opinion." What's your opinion on that?
I think he finds pleasure in all of these individuals being charged and being in the limelight because they all seem to have a nexus with him. Whether it's Rawlings, who studied him, and then that ended up being Brian Kohberger's one of his professors, or whether it's this situation where, with Rex Heuermann, where a lot of people feel that they, are similar in their MO. I don't believe they're similar in their MO, but I think in the piece that they are both similar is that they studied their victims. They got the correct victim to victimize to get away with the crime. So I think they were intelligent in that respect, both Brian Kohberger, Rex Heuermann, and Dennis Rader. I mean, let's face it, the only reason Brian Kohberger got caught was because he accidentally, that sheath fell off of him. I just imagine him having nightmares about that. Other than that, I don't even know that right now we know that it's Brian Kohberger. Not to digress.
Yeah.
The
Jessica
thing
K.
you do know is birds of a feather flock together. And we're talking about the same birds.
Yeah. Jessica K. I love Dr. Raj. Reminds me of my dad in a weird way. My dad was a psychiatrist, and my dad.
He was a wonderful guy too?
Yeah, he was. My dad was a psychiatrist for 40 years. He trained, and the 3 slogans from him I took away: "Just do it." He stole that from Nike. "Mind your business." He always told me to mind my business, not worry about other people, and stay the course. He stole that from, I think, George W. Bush, maybe back in the day with the war. But anyway, I digress there. Jessica said, "Hey, correcting me," which I love. "LOL. Us local Kansans, we say El Dorado. El Dorado. That's how we pronounce it. Like that El Dorado. El Dorado. You learn something new every day. For your information, Joel." And then we've got this one. "Thanks for checking in on Carrie. Tell her she's in all our thoughts and prayers. We will do." Carrie's this is from Cindy Hollenbeck, who's in the Moscow Pullman area. "Carrie's a beacon of truth and justice for all of us. Great to hear all the support. I'm loving that." Dr. Raj, back to you on this one. This is a you question again. So the sheriff said that BTK stopped communicating with him following an interview a few months ago, and Rader says he now refers to the sheriff as cowboy.
What a compliment! Calling a Kansan person or an Okie a cowboy is a step up in the world. I've got many friends. If you call them a cowboy, they'd have a smile on their face for the rest of their life.
Chief, to you, just to continue with this. So Dennis Rader had previously denied any involvement in these cold cases and said, and this is a quote, "I'm done speaking with Osage County Sheriff Eddie Virden." But he did say, and I quote, he enjoyed meeting with investigators regarding the disappearance of Shauna Garber, who went missing on Halloween in 1990. So he said he's quote unquote done talking, but enjoyed meeting with investigators. How do you read that? Because words are important when you're talking to these guys. And I'll let Jen weigh on this after you, but maybe Missouri doesn't have a death penalty. Maybe it's not a death. I don't know. So maybe he's being a little more lenient there, but what do you make of it, Chief?
So what I make of it is, not so much as what he said, but what he didn't say. He never said that that's all the people that I've murdered. These are all the victims that I have. He never said that. So to me, the message is in the detail. I'm done talking, because that's all I want to say about this, because if I tell you everything, I can't control the narrative. So I'm still feeling that this is a part that him controlling the narrative is something that really is etched in who he is etched in his DNA. So yeah, I don't take anything from his words, but I take a lot from what he didn't say. He didn't say that I've told you everything that I've done. He never said anything close to that. He did say, I'm done talking, because I would take that to mean I got more that I could tell y'all, but I don't feel like it right now. I'll tell you.
And you know later. What? I'm slow on the uptake. I never even thought of that, but it is so smart. It's what he doesn't say. And as Dr. Raj alluded to, he might not be saying it to control the narrative, which it sounds like. Back to you, Jen Coffendorfer. So, as you know, I like to talk about the victims, and we haven't really gotten into this, so I'm just going to lay this out. The one from Oklahoma, Cindy Kinney. She goes by Cindy Kinney. Last seen, we talked about this a little bit, back in 1976 at a laundromat. And Dennis Rader was quoted as saying something about bad laundry. And in fact, the sheriff said that he decided to investigate when he learned that Rader had included the phrase "bad laundry day" in his writings. Now, this cold case, Jen, was reopened back in December. She went missing in 1976, gets reopened in December. And just by chance, it turns out that Dennis Rader was a regional installer for ADT home alarm systems back at that time. Although the sheriff was not able to confirm that Dennis Rader installed the systems at the laundromat, he was also involved in Boy Scouts in the area. What do you read into all this, Jen?
Well, you talked about breadcrumbs. I mean, as an investigator, I'm looking at all of that, and certainly those are clues that have to be checked out. Serial killer, same location, right time frame, right kind of victim. Those are some important clues that obviously they checked out, and it looks like we're fruitful. I think the big piece is going to be, were the items that were recovered from Dennis Rader's little shingled compartment, are those somehow related to either of these victims? Is that why they're 100% sure in some way, whether that's DNA or whether they had a picture of something, or whether it was something that that individual had and they know that it was theirs either because a relative said it was theirs or it was in a photo or something like that. So I agree with Chief. Whenever law enforcement comes out and says, listen, we're sure, I pay close attention to that. That at least means they are truly sure. They're not lying. They're not misleading. They don't want to have egg on their face. So Anyway, I think it's a wonderful thing that they have stuck with their investigations and followed the proper procedures to try to make this case.
And Dr. Raj, I'm just thinking about what how she was describing all of that concrete that they had to dig under to find this pantyhose ligature. What does it tell you that a serial killer, and we don't know if this is related to the cold cases. I want to be clear on that. But what does it say that he would put something underneath all of this cement, all this concrete, take the effort to build this, pour the concrete, all to hide a possible trophy?
Who wants to control the finding of anything? That's what you have to look at. That's what it was all about. He wanted to make sure that nobody oops and found something. Then he wouldn't be in control of the find. But boy, when they had the breadcrumbs out there and led people there, whoo-hoo, buddy. Then who do you have to? Who would you have to look at as the source of the information? Him.
Rod, just an interesting point from Joan. Every time you talk about Dennis Rader's behavior, you should add about his dressing up in women's underwear and taking photos. He loves BTK image, not the loser image. Russell Williams was the same. That's an interesting point there. He did dress up as a woman. What does that say about his fetish and how he behaved and acted?
Well, I think that sometimes people within their minds see themselves as victims. And so him dressing up as a woman would be a way for him to identify that he feels victimized like the people he's victimizing. It kind of making a emotional connection. But with the mentally ill, you're guessing. You don't know. I mean, but that would be a great reason for people to dress that way.
Chief, the sheriff said something interesting, which I kind of took in passing, but now I'm, pausing and going to ask you about it. The quote is, "We were not looking for bodies. We were looking for items. We did find some items. We can't release what they are." So it sounds pretty obvious that they found more than just this pantyhose ligature. But why not bodies? They'd want to try to find these people, maybe get the DNA. Is it that they just don't have the leads right now? They don't know where to look for those bodies, but they did know to look for these trophies. Is the next step to try to somehow get him to clue them in, if he is responsible, as to where these bodies are?
To me, that suggests that someone gave them this information. I mean, flat hands down, someone gave this information. They knew what they were looking for when they went to that area. They saw, and they have corroborating evidence that says, okay, we need to go and do this. Because let me tell you something. Law enforcement are not going out and pay thousands of dollars to bust up a bunch of concrete if they don't have some very good information that has been corroborated not only through some sort of statement and some sort of physical search, like maybe GPS, ground penetrating radar, or something to that effect. And I'm just taking a guess at it because I don't know for sure. But like I said, that there is some information that exists that we in the general public do not know about this case. That's what led them to discover the evidence that they found. That's the reason why they are so confident in how they found it and who it belongs to.
Super interesting. Reese Carlisle. Jen, do you know the answer to this? When did he write Bad Laundry Day? It was in a diary, and I think they found it. And before you get to that, I'll just let the audience know that at the end of June, they did raid Dennis Rader's prison cell. They turned it upside down. That's when they visited him. And that's where a lot of this stuff, I guess, stemmed from. But do you know when he actually wrote this? Have they publicly made it public yet?
They haven't made it public, only that it was quote unquote in his writings. So we don't know whether it was writings from before or writings that were discovered. But I will say this, I would think it would be more recent, because I would believe that if they had that information all that time ago, that would have been looked at. The laundromat, this young woman missing from a laundromat, the proximity, all of those clues. So I would believe it is something more recent.
This is interesting. Caroline Miller. I don't know how accurate this is, but pantyhose were popular in 1976, maybe more so than today. So I always hear investigators say you got to put yourself in that time period. So maybe there is something there. Who knows? But so Kerry actually put out a long statement. I'm going to kind of take it in parts and get the best guess take on that role. Thomas always has interesting comments. We can look at the way he wired the alarms, if they have any knowns, and trace them to him. So that's wild to me. That was back in the 70s. So who knows that those alarms, I doubt that they would still be the same alarms. What do I know? So this is Kerry's statement. I became aware that Osage County Sheriff's Office investigators from Oklahoma and Kansas Bureau of Investigation agents, assisted by the Park City Police Department, were at the Park City, Kansas site where my childhood home originally stood, working active investigations into possible missing persons and unsolved murder cases allegedly tied to my father, Dennis Rader, the BTK serial killer. These cases predate his arrest on February 25th, 2005. So the obvious implication is he could have been the man because it predates his arrest. In January 2023, I became aware of the missing person case of Cindy Dawn Kinney, a 16-year-old cheerleader who disappeared from a laundromat back on June 23rd, 1976. I was quickly connected with the Osage County Sheriff's Office, to which I offered the same aid, and was promptly flown to Osage County, Oklahoma, to assist on both cases. I'm going to stop it right there. Jen, I don't know what you can say publicly, and the truth is I don't know that much, but I do know, and I know she said it, that she went to visit her father, Kerry did. Do you know, are you able to say how that turned out? And obviously I want to protect her privacy, but I think some of this is out on the public record.
Yeah, I mean, when she was first contacted, she reached out to me, and like I said, so I've been sitting on it a very long time because it was really the law enforcement story to tell and her story to tell. But Carrie is the type of person, she needs somebody to talk to, and particularly I think somebody in law enforcement is very helpful for her. I'm retired, but you get the point. Somebody who has dealt and seen and had those, not similar emotions, but can understand her emotions, so to speak. So anyway, as far as what happened during their conversation, I'll caveat this by just saying I want her to tell that story. But I think it was so brave of her to go in there. And I say that because she hadn't been involved with her father for years. And in fact, had a no contact type order. And so, Dennis is no dummy. And I think he probably might have even seen through, this reestablishment in conjunction with everything going on with the sheriff's office. So anyway, it is her story to tell, but I wanted to just give a shout out of how brave it was, I think, for her to go in and try.
Kudos to you. Kudos to her. I agree with both of you. Caroline Miller. Chief, this was interesting to me, not necessarily because of content, but I want to get your take, and I'll tell you in a sec. I remember shopping for pantyhose at a grocery store. Maybe he saw her purchase them and got excited. I guess the question is, a predator can go after you for the smallest of things, especially with a serial killer. Could be one tiny mistake that you don't even know you're making, that you're maybe turning them on erotically. Is this true that it could be something so minor? You're just buying pantyhose, minding your business, but in Dennis Rader's mind, he's excited now. He's salivating. He wants to kill. Is it that small? Difference in what makes someone survive or not, potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about, take robbery suspects. Robbery suspects will see something that they want, and then they will go after it. That's the reason why victims of robberies become victims of robberies, because that person has seen something that you have, something that someone else wants. They go after it. The same thing stands true for serial killers. They can see anything that triggers them, that turns them on, and then you may become that, or maybe you may become that next victim. So yeah, I mean, is it far-fetched to think that that may have happened? No, it's not far-fetched to think, but like I said, we are still trying to make rational thoughts out of the irrational. We've got to keep that in mind because look, it's hard. It is extremely hard. That's why they have experts to talk to serial killers way after their crimes have been committed and they've sat down with and been convicted and their crimes are done. That's why they have experts to go in and talk to them, because look, it's hard for us as rational people to understand the minds of a serial killer.
Jen, Bundy data is always here, and shout out to Bundy data. The one hose is cut off. Do we know this? One leg is cut off. The other leg is pulled through the panty part. So it's like a hangman's noose. He may have heard about Ted Bundy. Anything to this that you know of? There's an image of this ligature, but I couldn't make all of this out in that image for sure.
No, I don't know that to be true or false. So it could be true. Maybe she's seen something I haven't seen. Certainly it wasn't described in that manner when the sheriff spoke about it. But I also don't want to make too much out of the fact that it was pantyhose. And I want to say, because of this, and we practice this in my self-defense class. I strangle you with pantyhose. I strangle you with belts. I strangle you with cords. I strangle you with any ligature, because those are the types of ligatures that these individuals use that want to kill you. And quite frankly, some are much more effective than others. Some may bring a longer period of time of suffering, but still get the job done. I mean, I listened recently, actually, to one of Dennis Rader's confessions. And the one thing that really he struggled with early on in his killing, it's so hard to strangle someone. You can knock them out in seconds, really, by compressing the carotid artery, but they're just unconscious. To actually get someone to die takes so much force and so much time. And so, of course, a ligature helps speed all that up. My point is that because it was so difficult for him to strangle people, I mean, he had to strangle, I think, the Arturos, I want to say the husband, like 3 different episodes, and the wife, I believe, at least 2 episodes to actually get the job done, and put plastic bags over them, and put shirts over the plastic bags because they were biting through the bags. So my point is, I'm not sure it was just something he saw or something that thrilled him. It might have been something that worked for him as a strangling tool.
One of these days, I'm going to get Koff to come on and teach STS Nation some of these self-defense moves.
You should. Hoff, you put your folks through that much trauma. I mean, you go through all of that. I'm afraid of you. Because
they all come out with red necks, like the real fair-skinned ladies. Oh, they're all red. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
Look, situational training is probably some of the best training that you can go through. But if you're going to that extreme, hey, I'm afraid of you. But that's good stuff. That really is good stuff, because you never know. You don't know that you need that knowledge until you need that knowledge.
Exactly.
Do not mess with Koff. That is for damn sure. Lucy Bell says, yes, what Carrie did was incredibly brave. Carrie's a victim too. She doesn't owe us anything. Yet her extraordinary capacity for empathy and heroism shines forward. Again, much love to Carrie. Very well said. I got to wrap it up in a few minutes. A couple more quick things to get through. Dr. Raj, to you, this statement from Carrie, just continuing on a little bit. She said, by March 2021, a do not contact order was legally lifted via assistance from the EDCF, the Kansas Department of Corrections, and the Kansas Governor's Office beyond these 2 cases that have been released publicly. She says, I'm not at liberty to discuss other possible missing persons and unsolved murder cases that are being actively investigated as possibly committed by my father, nor can I comment on my direct assistance in the investigations. She went and talked to her dad, and basically her dad wouldn't talk to her. What must it be like to have a father like that, Raj?
Incredibly sad. That's what it's like. And one thing I want to clear up, woman was attacked, pantyhose. Let me tell you, they don't serial killers don't think man, woman. They don't think sexually, they think target. And just like it was mentioned, it's hard to strangle someone to death. Wait a minute, who are you going to strangle? The easiest person you can find, the most vulnerable person you can find. That's who you strangle. And what do you use? What's ever available. You know, that isn't where they use their smarts. They don't use their smarts. They use their impulses. Find a target, kill a target. And the easier the target, smarter the move. That's where they're thinking. That's how they're thinking. And diving into, well, is it about a woman? Is it? No, it's not. It's about I get off on killing people. It takes a lot of effort, and not anybody off the street can strangle someone to death. You got to be very focused to kill somebody and strangling.
Raj, there's a person here, Caroline Miller again, who says Carrie should ignore him. Easier said than done when it's your father. You know, she still considers him her father. He is. And there's a part of her, I'm sure, that loves him deeply. Yeah.
I mean, you don't, just because your family member goes weird, you don't disown your family member. You know, she can probably remember when she was little and he was a dad and he hugged her and he kissed her and he was a good man. That was the drawer he pulled out to deal with her. So what's really hard for her is to imagine that he has all these different drawers, and some of his drawers are so dangerous and evil and destructive. That's the hard thing for her. And trying to answer questions where people are looking for logic when there is no logic is real hard. And I commend her for the strain of that, you know, of taking what she has known versus what they're asking her.
Well said. One more thing for Koff, and then we're going to wrap it up with final thoughts. In Carrie's statement, Jennifer, she says, this past spring, federal transaction immunity was offered to my father in the tri-state area by a federal district attorney's office to give my father a chance to confess to any other violent crimes he may have committed from roughly 1963 to 2005. Does that mean he would be spared the death penalty? Is because we were talking earlier about how he would get the death penalty. What does this mean in English about this federal transaction immunity? Do you know?
That's going to relate to the federal jurisdiction, which isn't what he should be worried about. He needs to be worried about that local jurisdiction that has the death penalty. So I obviously, you also, you know, if he crossed state lines to commit these crimes, it could have been a federal crime, and there is, you know, concern there for him federally. I think it's interesting they offered him immunity, but it doesn't sound like any of the other jurisdictions offered him immunity.
There you go. There's the answer. Dr. Roger Rhodes, he's a licensed therapist in private practice in South Carolina, specializing in dysfunctional families. He worked in the prison system. He is from Oklahoma originally. Raj, everyone wants a ooh-wee before you go. And
ooh-wee, buddy. Here's another one. Sooner born and sooner bred, and when I die, I'll be sooner dead. Go
say that one. Hold on. Say that one more time.
OU's mascot is the Sooners. And every time they play on the radio, they say sooner born and sooner bred. And when you die, I'm sooner dead. Go Oklahoma.
Raj, you're got to inject some humor into this world because it's a scary place. Nightwood says it. She says, thanks, Joel, for such an engaging panel. Thank you. And SDS Nation for levity. Raj, your final thoughts. It's a sad day for Carrie Rawson and all the victims, these two women, obviously, who are the center of this right now. But and it is Shauna Garber and Cindy Kinney. Again, Cindy Kinney went missing in 1976. But your final thoughts tonight, Raj.
My final thought is about support. Support the police. Support the victim's family. Support those people. They're in the immediate need, and something can be done about that. That is effort used and applied well. Sitting around, going over and over evil people does nobody any good.
In Yiddish, they would call him a mensch. That means just a great all-around guy. That is Chief, formerly Detective Sergeant Chris Anderson, a retired Birmingham Police Department veteran, 27 years of experience. He hosted Reasonable Doubt. He was on A&E's First 48 Birmingham. He's the host of the Crime and Cookie Juice podcast, and he's the author of The Case. Also about to be the author of Man, You're Nuts. I think you got to do parentheses W-O, Man, You're Nuts for women too. People who are in law enforcement like Jennifer Koffendorfer also feeling the effects. But Chief, your final thoughts hearing all this crazy news tonight.
My prayers go out to anyone that has been affected by this case. That includes CARE, that includes the victim's family, everybody that's involved. It's a hard thing to be a victim or being a survivor in a case like this, because you don't forget about it. You deal with it for every single day. So prayers to those family members and prayers to the law enforcement officers that are involved in this case. Because a lot of the times these officers take every bit of that crime scene, every bit of those pictures, every bit of everything that they've had to endure, they take it back home to their wives and their families and their children. And they're not as productive or they're not as fatherly as they could be because they don't know how to deal with what they've seen. So big ups to them. And I hate to do this. This is a shameless plug, but please go out and grab my book, The Case. It's now available on Amazon, and right now we'll start running a special here tomorrow about the sale of that book, because this case gives you some insight on what us law enforcement officers go through when we're working these cases. It's not just a book that I just put out and wrote it. But it truly takes you on a journey of what I had to go through when I was working these cases. And in order for you to understand the book, Man, You Are Crazy, you'll have to have read my book, The Case, because they both coincide with each other. And I see your book stack is looking a little low. I've got there he is. He's got it. I was supposed to send you a copy of that, but thanks, Joe, for going and buying it.
Handsome picture there. You
still got to send me the one with the John Hancock, but
I'm still sending it.
Yeah, no shameless plugs at all. These guys have all lived it, been there, done that. You guys are true crime fans. Get the Chief's book, The Case, and the new one's going to be coming out. Jennifer Koffendorfer, we need a book from you. She had a career in law enforcement, federal law enforcement, spanning over 28 years. She was a special agent with the FBI, specializing in gangs, narcotics, organized crime. And as you heard, you don't want to be the fool that tries to mug Koffendorfer. You're going to pay for that. So you better think twice. Jen, you and I know Carrie. We talk to her often. Your final thoughts tonight.
Well, first of all, I want to echo what my esteemed colleagues on this panel said. Everything they said, spot on. Second, I just want to say I don't think we've seen the end of what Dennis Rader crimes he's committed. I just really don't think we've seen the end, and I staying tuned for what else is uncovered. And finally, Rock, Chalk, Jayhawk, go!
Oh no!
Oh, sorry, I had to
no.
throw that in there.
Oh no! Not the Jayhawks.
I love it.
Jayhawks are a bunch of basketball players.
By the way, Chief, they said you got to make your book an Audible so they can hear that voice of yours, that silky smooth voice. They want the Audible book.
Yeah, we're working on that. And shouts out to the chief of everything. She has been on point tonight. I see you. Keep going.
She's all over it. And she wrote this comment here. Let's keep carrying our thoughts. This is a difficult time for her and her family. She's a brave woman, and we are thinking of you and so honored that you always share your heart and wisdom with STS. Amen to that. A quick programming note. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Timothy Hazlitt. Google him. Possible serial killer in Missouri. Speaking of serial killers, he was holding a woman in a sex dungeon with a collar around her neck, and she got away, and they think there might be other victims, so we're going to examine that tomorrow. with Detective Phil Ramos from the Las Vegas Police Department and Lieutenant Lisa Daddio, formerly of the New Haven Police Department. Two great investigators. I'm getting dragged to a wedding 3/4 of a way across the country. So no live shows Friday, Sunday, Monday, but we're going to have Surviving My Biggest Case. And we will bring those to you back live Tuesday. Until then, love you, America. Love you, Birmingham. Love you, Kansas. Love you, Oklahoma. Love you, South Carolina. Love you, Florida. Love you everywhere, near and far in between. Guess, hang on one second.